I spent 3 months planning a family trip, but when I brought the itinerary to my son's house, my daughter-in-law laughed. "Why would you come? This trip is for real family, not some old-school accountant." My son placed my ticket in his mother-in-law's hand and said, "I'm taking her instead. You should stay home." I smiled, wished them a wonderful trip, and walked away. That night, I opened my financial records and found something they never expected me to uncover. Thank you for being here with me. Before we dive in, drop a quick comment. Have you ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours? Yes or no? I truly read every response. Just a quick note. Some details have been adjusted for storytelling and reflection. The message is what I hope stays with you. The itinerary had taken me 3 months to design, printed on good cardstock at the library, where I used to believe planning things perfectly meant they couldn't fall apart. I stood on my son Barrett's front porch at 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon, holding that carefully bound booklet, like an offering 3 days before we were supposed to leave for the Outer Banks together. At 62, I'd spent 35 years as chief accountant for Raleigh's public high schools, managing budgets that ran into the millions. Numbers had always made sense to me in ways people sometimes didn't. I thought if I organized this trip perfectly enough, it would bring us closer. Barrett Ashford, my only child at 35, opened the door wearing a careful smile that should have warned me. He worked as a sales manager for a building materials company, lived in this house I'd helped him buy with a $22,000 down payment gift. The mortgage was underwater now, though he'd never told me that directly. "Mom," he said, not moving from the doorway. "Come in." His wife Briar stood in the living room, 33 years old, all calculated angles, and a smile honed through years working marketing campaigns for luxury brands she couldn't personally afford. "I brought the final itinerary," I said, holding it out. "I added that lighthouse tour on day 3. Vernon always wanted to see Bodie Island. I thought Barrett might—" "Mom." Barrett took the booklet but didn't open it. "My colleagues are all entrepreneurs executives. I can't spend a week explaining that my mother was just a public school accountant." The words landed with surgical precision. Just a school accountant. As if 35 years of protecting public money, of catching embezzlement schemes that would have bankrupted entire districts amounted to just. Briar moved to the coffee table and slid something across the polished wood. Airline tickets. I could see the name printed on them, Celeste Romero. The front door opened behind me. Celeste Romero, Briar's mother, swept in with an entrance that suggested she'd been waiting for her cue. At 61, she ran 3 beauty salons across Raleigh with the same iron control she seemed to apply to everything else in her life, including apparently this moment. Her timing was too perfect, her surprise too rehearsed. "Oh, Lorraine?" She accepted the tickets from Briar's hand with practiced warmth. "How wonderful. You know I've always wanted to see the Outer Banks, and you've worked so hard you really should stay home and rest. You'd be so much more comfortable watering your plants, wouldn't you?" I looked at my son. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I see," I said quietly. "I'll let you all enjoy your trip." I picked up the itinerary from where Barrett had set it down and walked out. I sat in my car outside his house for 20 minutes before I could make my hands turn the key. Through the window, I could see them laughing about something. My hands shook against the steering wheel. The kitchen felt hollow when I got home. The pale yellow walls Vernon had painted seemed to close in. The August calendar by the refrigerator showed the departure date circled in thick red marker from 3 months ago when I'd believed we were still a family. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table and pulled up the booking tabs labeled Outer Banks Family Trip. The beach house in Nag's Head, $3,100 for 7 nights. Non-refundable. The seafood restaurant reservations, $480 deposit. The lighthouse tour. The dolphin watching the surf lessons I'd booked, hoping Barrett might remember the summer Vernon taught him to body surf. I clicked cancel on the beach house. The confirmation email arrived immediately. Cancellation confirmed. No refund available. I clicked cancel on the restaurants, cancel on the tours, cancel on every carefully planned piece of a trip that was supposed to bring us together. The emails piled up in my inbox like death certificates. Total non-refundable loss, $4,200. I pulled the photo album from my desk drawer, the one I'd assembled over the past month. The last page showed Vernon holding a tourist brochure for Bodie Island Lighthouse, grinning at the camera. He'd circled the observation deck in red pen. 214 steps, he'd written in the margin. Something I need to tell you when we get to the top. We never made that trip. He died 2 years ago. They never had time to hear the stories, I whispered to his photograph. They never wanted to. How many times had I clicked confirm payment on these same websites with excitement, never imagining I'd be clicking cancel alone in the dark? At 11 p.m., I closed the booking websites and opened a new Excel file. The blank spreadsheet glowed white against the darkness of my kitchen. I'd built 1,000 spreadsheets over 35 years. Budget projections, audit trails, financial reconciliations that tracked every missing dollar back to its source. 35 years as chief accountant had taught me one absolute rule: numbers don't lie. Only people do. I clicked the first cell and typed date, amount, category, purpose, recipient. Then I opened my desk drawer and pulled out my checkbook register, my bank statements. The file folder labeled Barrett Help, where I'd kept every receipt, every cleared check, every documentation of every time I'd helped my son over the past 15 years. College tuition 2008. I typed the amount, $28,000. Wedding costs 2017, $15,000. House down payment 2019, $22,000. Car repair, emergency loan, credit card bailout, medical bill, security deposit, student loan help. The entries filled the cells one by one each row, a memory I tried not to keep score of because you weren't supposed to keep score with your children. You were supposed to give freely, love unconditionally, help without expecting anything back. By 2 a.m., I had a number that made me stop breathing. $94,000. I stared at that sum in cell B47, calculated automatically by the formula I'd written. My hands rested motionless on the keyboard. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and my heartbeat pounding in my ears. $94,000 I'd given him over 15 years. Money I'd saved from my school accountant's salary while he told strangers I was just a public school accountant, as if those years of careful saving, careful giving, careful loving meant nothing at all. The number glowed on my laptop screen at 4:17 a.m., like an accusation I'd been too afraid to name for 15 years. $94,000 in cell B47, calculated by a formula that couldn't lie the way people could. I saved the file with shaking hands. Financial history: Barrett Ashford, 2008 to 2023, Mother's Ledger, .xlsx. Then I sat back in Vernon's old oak desk chair and understood what I'd actually built. This wasn't just a record of loss. This was a forensic audit trail, every entry time-stamped, every transaction cross-referenced with bank statements, canceled checks, receipts I'd kept in folders, labeled with my son's name, because that's what accountants do. We document everything. 35 years managing school budgets had trained me to build paper trails that could withstand federal audits, catch embezzlement, prove fraud in ways that held up in court. I just built one against my own child. Every penny documented, I whispered to the empty kitchen. Every transaction dated, every promise broken. The sun came up while I sat there watching the August light creep across the pale yellow walls Vernon had painted 20 years ago. I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I felt something colder than either the absolute clarity of someone who'd finally stopped lying to herself about what was happening. 2 days later, Lloyd Hardy arrived at 8 in the morning with his locksmith tools and a weathered face that had seen enough family wars to know when not to ask questions. He was a man in his 50s who'd learned discretion was part of the job. "You want me to change all of them?" he asked, surveying my front door, back door, garage. "Every single lock," I said, "and install a deadbolt on the back entrance." Across the driveway, Faye Langley stood on her front porch, watering the ferns she'd been growing for as long as I'd lived here. At 64, she'd been my neighbor for 2 decades and possessed the rare gift of knowing exactly when to speak and when to simply watch. Right now, she was watching very carefully. While Lloyd drilled and fitted new cylinders, I sat on my porch steps with my phone and systematically dismantled every connection I'd maintained to make their lives easier. Called the phone company, disconnected Breyer's line from my family plan. Called the insurance agent, removed Barrett from my auto policy umbrella. Logged into my bank, canceled the automatic monthly transfers I'd set up years ago to help with his mortgage. The sound of the drill stopped. Lloyd tested the new front door lock with the fresh key. "Everything all right, Lorraine?" Faye called across the lawn, setting down her watering can. "That's the 3rd lock he's changed." She crossed the grass in her gardening clogs, concern etched in the lines around her eyes. "I'm cleaning house, Faye," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. "Long overdue." She looked at me for a long moment, then at Lloyd collecting his tools, then back at me. Something shifted in her expression, recognition maybe, or respect. "If you need anything," she said quietly, "and I mean anything, you call me, day or night." She was the only person besides my doctor who got my new unlisted phone number. Every new lock felt like a door closing on 15 years of hoping I could earn love through checkbooks and forgiveness. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of silence that should have warned me. I sat at my kitchen island with black coffee and the newspaper still in my bathrobe at 9 a.m. because I could reading about the library's upcoming fundraiser without the constant anxiety of waiting for Barrett's calls. The pounding on my front door started at 9:14. "Mom!" Barrett's voice carried through the wood, sharp with frustration. "I know you're in there. Your car is right here. Open the door." I turned the page of the newspaper, took another sip of coffee. The pounding intensified. Through the front window I could see Breyer standing behind him, arms crossed, face tight with anger. "This is ridiculous, Lorraine," she shouted. "We just want to talk." "No," I thought, carefully folding the newspaper. "You want absolution. You want me to open this door, listen to whatever excuse you've rehearsed, and go back to being the woman who believed planning things perfectly could make people love her. You won't get it." Across the street, Faye had appeared on her porch with her watering can, making a great show of tending to plants that didn't need watering, watching, witnessing. The pounding continued for 20 minutes. Barrett's voice escalated from frustration to anger to something that sounded almost like panic. My phone, the old number they still had, buzzed uselessly on the counter. I turned off the ringer days ago. Finally, I heard car doors slam, an engine start, gravel crunching as they pulled away. I finished my coffee in the sudden quiet. 5 minutes later, Faye knocked, gentle, not demanding. I opened the door. "You all right?" she asked, studying my face. "I am," I said, surprised to find it was true. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "That daughter-in-law of yours cornered me yesterday at the grocery store. Asked if you'd lost your mind. I told her you've never looked sharper. Thank you." How long had they expected this to work? Showing up on my doorstep demanding access to a home they'd spent years treating like an ATM. Faye hesitated at my kitchen door hand on the frame, as if debating whether to say more. Then she turned back. "Oh, and by the way, Lorraine." Her tone shifted, careful now. "A few weeks ago, I saw your son walking into your bank branch on Fayetteville Street, by himself, around midday on a Tuesday. I only noticed because I was at the coffee shop across the street. Did you know about that?" I set my coffee cup down carefully on the granite counter. The ceramic clicked in the sudden stillness. "No," I said quietly, "I didn't." "The bank." Barrett had gone to my bank, the branch where I'd banked for 20 years, where the tellers knew my name, where every account was in my name alone. The branch where I'd been cashing my paychecks since before he was born. "Why would he go there without telling me?" "I thought you should know," Faye said softly. After she left, I stood in my kitchen staring at nothing, my mind already calculating. Monday morning, first thing. I'd walk into that branch myself and ask exactly what my son had been looking for. Because 35 years as a chief accountant had taught me that when someone starts asking about your money without your knowledge, they're not planning to help you manage it. They're planning to take it. Monday morning, I walked into the Fayetteville Street branch at 9:02 a.m., 2 minutes after they unlocked the doors, and asked to speak with the manager immediately. The teller, who'd processed my deposits for a decade, looked startled. "Mrs. Ashford is everything." "The manager," I repeated. "Now please." Denise Fletcher, 43. The branch manager, who'd worked there for 8 years, came out from the back office with a smile that faltered the moment she saw my face. "Lorraine, what can I—" "Someone came in here asking about my accounts." I kept my voice level, professional. "My son, Barrett Ashford. I need to know exactly what information was disclosed." The color drained from Denise's face. She glanced at the teller, then back at me. "Perhaps we should talk in my office." I followed her past the loan desks to a small glassed-in room. She closed the door, sat down, folded her hands on the desk, buying time. "Lorraine, you know I can't discuss specific customer inquiries without—" "Was he here or not?" She swallowed. "I can confirm that an individual matching your description visited the branch and made general inquiries about account access procedures for family members concerned about elderly relatives." There it was, the careful phrasing that said everything while admitting nothing. Barrett hadn't just stopped by to say hello. "What did you tell him?" "Standard information available to any member of the public." Denise's hands tightened. "Joint account holders, power of attorney requirements, authorized signer documentation. Nothing specific to your accounts. I would never—" "I want every authorization on file reviewed," I said. "Every signature card, every power of attorney document, every piece of paper with my name on it. And I want new security protocols on all my accounts. Verbal password, photo ID requirement, no telephone transactions." "Of course." Relief flooded her face. "I'll process that immediately." "Good." I stood. Because the next person who asks about my accounts without my explicit written permission is going to find themselves explaining it to my attorney. I sat in my car in this bank parking lot and felt the last thread of doubt snap clean. This wasn't paranoia. This was war. Barrett had gone to my bank to research how to access my money. The house locks weren't about concern for my safety. The guardianship conversation wasn't about my health. It was about control, about assets, about $320,000 in real estate, and whatever they thought they could drain from my accounts before I noticed. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. There, Joanna Whitaker. I'd gotten her name from Patricia months ago, back when Patricia's husband died, and she needed help with the estate. Best elder law attorney in Raleigh, Patricia had said. Doesn't mess around. The receptionist put me through after a brief hold. Joanna Whitaker. The voice was crisp, professional, no nonsense. My name is Lorraine Ashford. I need to talk to someone about guardianship law in North Carolina. Specifically, how to prevent my son from filing for guardianship against my will. A pause. How soon can you come in? Today. 2 o'clock. Bring any documentation you have, financial records, medical records, anything relevant to your situation. I drove home, grabbed the printed copy of the $94,000 spreadsheet from the filing cabinet, and made it to Joanna's office in the Crabtree Valley Professional Complex with 10 minutes to spare. Joanna Whitaker, 47, was a tall woman with steel gray hair, pulled back in a neat bun, 15 years of elder law experience written in the sharp focus of her eyes. She shook my hand, gestured to the chair across from her desk, and waited. I slid the spreadsheet across the desk. 3 years of loans my son and his wife never paid back. $94,000. Joanna picked up the pages and started reading, line by line, entry by entry date, and amount and purpose. The office was silent except for the whisper of paper. 3 minutes passed. Then she looked up at me, and something shifted in her expression. Surprise giving way to something harder, sharper. In my 15 years practicing elder law, I have never seen a client this thoroughly prepared, she said quietly. This isn't the file of a victim. This is the file of someone about to win a lawsuit. I felt something loosen in my chest. They're planning to file for guardianship. Barrett and his wife Briar, and her mother Celeste. They want my house, the one I inherited from my parents, worth $320,000. They changed my locks this weekend. Barrett went to my bank asking about account access. Joanna made notes on the legal pad, her pen moving fast. North Carolina guardianship proceedings typically move quickly 10 to 30 days from filing to hearing. The court will appoint a guardian ad litem to investigate and interview you. They'll likely order a competency evaluation by a state psychologist. We need to get ahead of this. How? Preemptive competency evaluation. I know 3 excellent geriatric psychiatrists who specialize in capacity assessments. We get you evaluated now on record before any petition is filed. Cognitive testing, psychiatric interview, functional assessment, everything documented that you have full capacity to manage your own affairs. She flipped through her desk calendar. I can get you in tomorrow morning if you're available. How many elderly parents sat in this same chair, Joanna's office, realizing too late that their own children had been circling like creditors? I'm available, I said. Joanna nodded, still writing. Do you have any other documentation, text messages, emails, recordings, anything showing their intent or behavior pattern? I opened my mouth to say no and stopped. Wait. There's a phone, I said slowly. Briar's old phone. She left it at my house over a year ago when she upgraded. Just tossed it in my desk drawer and forgot about it. Joanna's pen stopped moving. She looked up at me and I saw the question forming before she asked it. Did she ever come back for it? No. It's been sitting there dead for months. Maybe longer. I never thought... I stopped. My heart was hammering. Could there be messages on it, Data? If she didn't wipe it before she abandoned it. Joanna's voice was careful, measured. Potentially years of text messages, photos, emails, search history, everything. It was sitting in my desk drawer right now, dead battery, no passcode, full of God knows what messages and data. I looked at Joanna across the desk and saw the exact same realization dawn in her eyes. I drove straight home from Joanna's office, pulled into the driveway at 3:47 p.m., and walked directly to my desk without taking off my coat. The bottom drawer, third one down on the right, where I kept old tax returns and warranty paperwork. I pulled it open and rifled past manila folders until my fingers found its smooth glass and plastic slightly dusty. Briar's old Samsung Galaxy, rose gold case. She'd left it here in January 2022 when we packed away Christmas decorations, tossed it in the drawer when I asked her to clear the desk. I already switched everything to my new phone, she'd said. I'll grab it next time. She never came back for it. I found the charger cable and plugged it in. The screen stayed black for 30 seconds, then the battery icon appeared, slowly filling. 2 minutes later, the lock screen lit up. No passcode prompt, just the home screen completely accessible. I called Joanna immediately. "The phone?" I said. "Can I legally look through it? It was left in my home, but it was hers." "How long ago?" "Over a year, January 2022. Papers rustled on her end. "If it was abandoned on your property with no attempt at retrieval for that length of time, North Carolina law treats it as abandoned property. You have every legal right to inspect it. So I can—" Don't open it yet." Her voice sharpened. "Bring it to me tomorrow morning. I want our digital forensics specialist to extract everything properly, dates, metadata, deleted files, everything in a format that's admissible in court. If there's evidence on that phone, we need it documented correctly." I looked at the glowing screen, the app icons arranged in neat rows. Messages, photos, email. "Tomorrow," I said, "first thing." 5 days later, I was pouring my second cup of coffee when I heard the mail truck. I walked to the mailbox in my slippers and pulled out the usual stacked catalogs, bills, a postcard from my dentist, and a certified letter, green and white sticker. The return address was a law firm I didn't recognize. Wake County Superior Court case caption printed across the top. I sat down on the front porch steps and opened it. Notice of intent to file adult guardianship petition. I read it twice. Advanced cognitive decline and inability to safely manage independent estate, concerning behavioral changes, financial mismanagement, necessary protective intervention. Petition to be filed within 5 business days. Lorraine. Faye Langley was crossing from her lawn to mine, her face creased with concern. "You okay, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." I handed her the letter. She read it standing beside me, her mouth moving silently. When she finished, her eyes were red. "Advanced cognitive decline." Her voice cracked. Your own boy is doing this to you." I shook my head slowly. "Not my boy, Faye. This has Celeste Romero written all over it." "What do you need?" She sat down beside me, her hand finding mine. "What can I do?" "Be my witness," I said quietly. "If they ask, tell them exactly what you've seen, the locks, the bank visit, everything." The certified letter sat on my passenger seat during the drive to Joanna's office, like a passenger I'd been carrying for years without knowing it. The truth finally given paper form. Joanna was waiting when I arrived. She'd already pulled the petition filing from the court system. "Under North Carolina law," she said, spreading documents across her conference table, "the court will appoint a guardian ad litem and a state psychologist to evaluate you before the hearing. They'll interview you, assess your living situation, review your finances." "When?" "Probably within 2 weeks of filing, but we're not waiting." She pulled out her phone. "I've scheduled your private psychological evaluation for tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Dr. Gerald Martian, geriatric psychiatry, 40 years of experience. We document your full cognitive capacity before the court-appointed evaluator even makes contact." I nodded. "What about the phone?" "Our specialist extracted everything. 12,000 text messages, 4 years of photos, complete email archive browser history." She paused. "We're still analyzing it, but there's something you need to see right now." She slid a printed document across the table. Email letterhead from Barrett's mortgage lender. "We subpoenaed his financial communications. This came back yesterday." I read the date first, May 12th, 2023. 4 months ago. 4 months before the vacation argument, before the lock change, before any of this supposedly started. The email subject line, Re-Guardianship Financial Management Authority Inquiry. Barrett's original message was quoted below. "If a parent is placed under adult guardianship due to cognitive decline, what authority does the appointed guardian have over the parent's existing mortgage home, equity, and real property? Can assets be liquidated to satisfy outstanding family debts owed to the guardian?" How many conversations had we had in May while I researched beach house rentals, and he researched how to legally declare me incompetent? "May," I said, my voice flat. "He was planning this in May. While you were planning a family vacation," Joanna said quietly, "he was planning to take your house." I stared at the date again. May 12th, 2023. 3 days after Mother's Day. I remembered that Sunday. Barrett and Breyer had brought white roses, my favorite. We'd had brunch at Crabtree Valley, talked about summer plans, laughed together. Barrett had hugged me goodbye in the parking lot, told me he loved me. 72 hours later, he'd sent that email to his lender. 4 months. While I sat at my desk, comparing Outer Banks rental prices and mapping hiking trails and printing itineraries, my son sat at his laptop typing Guardianship Financial Authority North Carolina into search engines. While I budgeted and saved and planned a family vacation, he planned to take everything. I looked at the timestamp on the lender's response email, May 12th, 2023, 3 days after Mother's Day. Dr. Gerald Marsh's private evaluation 2 days earlier had taken 90 minutes and ended with him writing 4 pages of notes in what he called the clearest capacity assessment I've conducted in a decade. His report was already filed with Joanna's office by the time the court sent their own examiner. Dr. Raymond Hayes, the court-appointed clinical psychologist, opened his standardized cognitive assessment booklet at exactly 8:03 a.m. Unaware, he was about to test someone who'd spent 35 years auditing budgets larger than his annual salary. He had administered hundreds of competency evaluations in his 20-year career, but he'd never seen someone bring a forensic-grade Excel ledger to one. The clinic room was sterile white fluorescent lights humming overhead, a wooden table between us covered with test materials. Dr. Hayes settled into his chair and clicked his pen. Let's begin with some basic orientation questions. Can you tell me today's date? September 27th, 2023, Wednesday. And where are we right now? Wake County Psychological Services, 4200 Wake Forest Road, Raleigh, North Carolina. He made a note. Good. Now I'm going to read you a series of numbers. I'd like you to repeat them back to me in reverse order. I repeated every sequence flawlessly. Backward digit span, forward digit span, serial sevens, subtraction. Every cognitive test designed to detect dementia or mental decline. I answered each one with the same calm precision I'd used for 3 decades when auditors questioned my departmental budget allocations. 20 minutes in, Dr. Hayes set down his pen. Can you explain your current financial situation and how you manage your personal accounts? I turned my laptop toward him. The screen displayed my ledger, every transaction dated, categorized, cross-referenced with supporting documentation. 3 years of loans payments, balances, running totals. I maintain a comprehensive accounting system, I said quietly. Every dollar my son and his wife borrowed is documented here with date, amount, stated purpose, and repayment status. The current outstanding balance is $94,000. Dr. Hayes stared at the screen for a full minute. His eyes moved down the columns, check numbers scanned, deposit slips, email confirmations, text message screenshots embedded as hyperlinked references. He closed his notebook. Ms. Ashford, he said slowly, I don't think we need to continue with these basic cognitive assessments. Your organizational capacity and financial management skills are exceptional. Frankly, they exceed what I see in most adults half your age. I met his eyes. Will that be in your report to the court? Every word of it. Before I tell you what Celeste revealed in that coffee shop comment, A, if you think she came to threaten me, or B, if you think she came to negotiate, and add one reason why in 5 to 10 words. Please note the next part includes some recreated details for narrative purposes. On the drive home from the clinic, I finally understood what it felt like to stop defending myself and start building a case. That afternoon at 2 p.m., my phone rang, unknown number. Lorraine, Celeste Romero's voice was careful, controlled. I was hoping we could meet, just the two of us, talk through some things before this gets any uglier. I agreed out of strategic curiosity. 30 minutes later, I walked into a coffee shop downtown and found her at a corner table looking uncharacteristically nervous. She'd ordered me a latte. It sat untouched between us, the foam already dissolving. I'll be direct, Celeste said, folding her hands on the table. The guardianship petition is going to collapse. Your psychological evaluation destroyed any credibility we had, so I'm here to propose a different solution. I'm listening. My daughter has been working on a strategy for 3 years now. She said it like a confession, like she was relieved to finally speak it out loud. Breyer is very smart, very patient. She understood that building a case takes time, documentation patterns, witnesses who could testify to concerning behavior. My hands stayed still on my coffee cup, and I signed a commercial lease in June, North Hills Mall. High-end salon premium location, exactly the kind of space I've wanted for 20 years. Her voice tightened. The initial payment is $47,000, due November 15th. There it was. The timeline pressure. The real deadline driving everything. I need liquidity, Celeste continued. Barrett needs relief from his debt. You need this guardianship petition to go away. So here's what I'm proposing. If you agree to forgive the $94,000 Barrett owes you, we'll withdraw the petition immediately. Everyone walks away clean. I let the silence stretch for 10 seconds. 20. Watched her shift in her chair, watched the desperation flicker across her face. Let me make sure I understand, I said finally. Your daughter spent 3 years manipulating me and documenting supposed cognitive decline. You signed a lease you couldn't afford. Barrett went to my bank researching how to access my accounts. You filed a fraudulent guardianship petition claiming I'm mentally incompetent. And now you want me to hand you $94,000 to make it all disappear." Celeste's jaw tightened. "I'm offering you a clean exit. How desperate do you have to be to sit across from the woman you're trying to rob and accidentally hand her your entire motive on a silver platter?" I stood up, picked up my purse, looked down at her across the table. "Thank you for being so transparent, Celeste," I said quietly. "And thank you for confirming every single thing I needed to know." I walked out of the coffee shop, crossed the parking lot to my car, and sat in the driver's seat with my hands on the steering wheel. Then I called Joanna. "I just left Celeste Romero," I told her, my voice steady. "She confirmed everything we suspected, the 3-year plan, Breyer as the architect, all of it. And there's more. She's racing against a financial clock of her own. November 15th, she needs $47,000 for a salon lease she signed in June. North Hills Mall. She's desperate, and she just handed me the entire timeline and motive on a silver platter." Joanna was quiet for 3 seconds. Then, "Can you come to my office right now? I need to document this while it's fresh, and I need to run corporate filings on that lease. If it's public record, we can prove everything." Joanna called me on Tuesday morning, 2 days after my coffee shop meeting with Celeste, and I could hear the smile in her voice before she said a single word. "Can you come to my office? I found it." 20 minutes later, I sat across from her at the conference table. Documents were spread between us like evidence at trial. Joanna slid the first page toward me. "Commercial lease agreement, North Hills Mall, premium retail space suite, 247. The signature line at the bottom read, Celeste Marie Romero. Signed June 15th. Joanna said, her finger tapping the date. "Initial payment, $47,000 due November 15th, 7 weeks from now." I scanned the document, monthly rent, utilities clause, tenant improvement allowance, everything standard except for the numbers, all of them far beyond what a small salon operator could reasonably afford. "She doesn't have it," Joanna continued. "I pulled her business financials through the subpoena. She's leveraged to the ceiling across all 3 of her existing salons. Credit lines, maxed equipment loans, outstanding payroll running thin. She needs your money to stay afloat, not just to expand to survive." I set the lease down carefully. So the guardianship petition wasn't about concern for my well-being. It was a business acquisition strategy. Joanna's voice was flat professional. "Your house as collateral, your accounts as operating capital, your debt forgiveness as immediate cash injection." They built a 3-year paper trail to justify taking legal control of your assets exactly when Celeste's payment deadline hit. The rage I felt was cold, precise, the kind of anger that doesn't explode but calculates. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now comes the beautiful part." Joanna pulled out another document, this one stamped with an official state seal. "When I served the financial subpoena under North Carolina General Statute Section 108A-116, the Elder Financial Protection Law, it automatically triggered a mandatory report to Adult Protective Services. We're not the only ones investigating them anymore. The state is." I stared at the form. Adult Protective Services, mandatory investigation, potential criminal referral. "They can't make that go away," Joanna said quietly. "They can withdraw the guardianship petition. They can apologize. They can pretend this never happened. But once APS opens a file, it stays open until they're satisfied there's no exploitation occurring. And based on what we've documented, this investigation is going to be thorough. The week between finding the lease and getting the phone data back was the longest 7 days of my life, not from fear, but from the cold, patient certainty of someone watching a trap snap shut." Joanna called me the following Tuesday. "The forensic extraction is complete. You need to see this in person." I drove to her office through October rain, the windshield wipers beating steady rhythm. Inside, Joanna had her laptop open on the conference table, a thick printed report beside it. 12,000 text messages, she said. 4 years of data. Our specialist recovered everything, even deleted conversations. She turned the screen toward me. "But these are the ones that matter." She began reading aloud, her voice measured and calm. Text from Celeste to Breyer, March 2021. "Keep the kid away from her grandma. She needs to feel completely isolated. Only let her visit when she's already feeling weak." I sat perfectly still. Breyer's response already done. Told Barrett his mother gets too emotional around Ivy. He agreed to limit contact. Joanna scrolled down. June 2021. Celeste to Breyer. "How's the documentation coming? We need consistent examples of irrational spending and confusion." Breyer to Celeste. "She bought Ivy 3 birthday presents this year. I'm framing it as compulsive shopping and memory loss. Barrett's on board." My hands were folded on the table. I didn't move, didn't blink. Joanna kept reading. September 2022. Briar to Celeste. She asked why we don't visit anymore. I told her she's imagining things that we see her all the time and she just doesn't remember. She actually apologized. Celeste's response, perfect. Document every apology. Confusion about recent events is textbook cognitive decline. Joanna stopped reading and looked at me. There are hundreds more. Detailed timelines, coaching sessions, strategy adjustments. They documented destroying you like it was a project plan. I stared at the screen at the neat rows of text messages at 3 years of calculated cruelty, laid out in 12-point font. I blamed myself, I said finally. My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. For 3 years, I thought I was the problem. Too needy, too sad, too much. I apologized to them for being confused when I wasn't confused at all. I canceled plans because Briar said I'd forgotten we'd already rescheduled when we hadn't. I bought extra gifts because Barrett told me I'd forgotten the first ones when they were sitting in my closet the whole time. How many times had I sat alone after they left wondering what I'd done wrong to make my own granddaughter flinch away from me, never knowing it was choreographed. They made me believe I was losing my mind, I continued, so that when they finally filed for guardianship, I'd be too broken to fight back. They were building a victim, systematically, deliberately. Joanna closed the laptop gently. What do you want to do with this, Lorraine? I looked at her steadily. The rage wasn't hot anymore. It was ice-cold, surgical, absolute. I want to end it. Joanna smiled the dangerous smile of a veteran lawyer who knows a case is dead to rights. Good, she said. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She glanced at the screen, then back at me. My assistant just texted. Barrett and Briar are parked outside your house right now. Your neighbor Faye called the office number when she saw them pull up. 7-year-old Ivy Ashford stood on my front porch, wearing the purple sweater I'd bought her for her birthday 6 months ago, positioned carefully between her mother and grandmother like a human shield. She had my gray eyes and her mother's careful stillness beloved grandchild and weaponized leverage all at once. Briar spoke first, her voice rehearsed and contrite. We came to apologize, Lorraine. To settle this as a family. We brought Ivy because she misses her grandmother. I looked at my granddaughter at the way she held Celeste's hand, but kept her eyes on me and unlocked the door. Not because I believed their script, because Ivy was 7 years old and none of this was her fault. They followed me into the living room, the same room where I'd sat after they canceled our vacation, where I'd found the ledger spreadsheet, where every piece of this had started unraveling. Briar and Celeste took the couch. Ivy slipped off the chair beside her mother and came to sit next to me instead, her small hand finding mine and squeezing tight. It was the hardest moment of the entire ordeal. I like your house, Grandma, she whispered. I squeezed back gently. Thank you, sweetheart. Celeste smoothed her skirt and leaned forward with practiced warmth. Lorraine, we all said things we regret. Emotions ran high. But we're family, and family finds a way through these difficulties. She slid a document across my coffee table. We brought some routine paperwork, just medical and billing authorization, so Barrett can help manage little chores during this stressful time. Makes everything simpler. I picked up the papers. 5 pages standard legal formatting, dense paragraphs of clauses and subclauses. I read them carefully, slowly, the way I'd read budget contracts for 3 decades. Page 3 made everything clear. Durable power of attorney. I read aloud, my voice perfectly calm. Section 5, Clause B agent is hereby granted explicit authority to execute real estate sales, transfers, and liquidations without principal's secondary signature or presence at closing. I turned the page. Section 7 agent may waive all daily cash withdrawal limitations and execute account transfers in any amount deemed necessary for principal's care and maintenance. I set the papers down flat on the table. This is not a utility billing authorization, Celeste. This is comprehensive legal control of my $320,000 house and every account I own. Briar's composure cracked. Her jaw tightened, her hands gripped her knees. Celeste attempted to smooth it over her voice, taking on the patronizing lilt people use with confused elderly relatives. You're misinterpreting the legal jargon. I was chief public accountant for the Raleigh school system for 35 years, Celeste. My voice was ice-cold, surgical. I have audited thousands of contracts. Do not attempt to explain to me what I am reading with my own eyes. I turned to Ivy, kissed her forehead tenderly. I love you, sweetheart. You did absolutely nothing wrong. Remember that. Then I stood and looked at Briar and Celeste with absolute authority. Leave my home right now. After they left, Ivy looking back at me through the rear window until they turned the corner, I stood at that closed door for 10 full minutes before my hands stopped shaking. 3 days later, I sat across a mahogany conference table from my son. Barrett had brought his attorney, Philip Brennan, who walked into Joanna's conference room expecting a routine family settlement negotiation. Joanna sat beside me, a thick accordion folder in front of her. She opened it methodically. "For the record," Joanna began, her voice professional and emotionless, "we are presenting the following evidence of financial exploitation, fraud, and conspiracy." She slid the first document across the table. Historical ledger documenting $94,000 in loans extended over 3 years with supporting bank records, check images, and text message confirmations. Brennan picked it up. His face went carefully neutral. Joanna continued. "Forensic extraction from abandoned mobile device belonging to Mrs. Breyer Ashford, containing 3 years of text message communications, documenting systematic isolation, gaslighting, and premeditated manipulation designed to create false evidence of cognitive decline." She slid the next stack across. Brennan's face drained of color. Public commercial lease filing for North Hills Mall, signed by Mrs. Celeste Romero in June 2023, requiring $47,000 by November 15th. Banking inquiry logs showing Mr. Barrett Ashford researched Guardianship Financial Authority in May 2023. Attempted execution of fraudulent power of attorney 3 days ago at Mrs. Ashford's residence, using a minor child as emotional leverage. Joanna placed the final document on top of the pile. Court-appointed psychological competency evaluation conducted by Dr. Raymond Hayes, concluding that Mrs. Lorraine Ashford demonstrates exceptional cognitive function, superior organizational capacity, and full legal competency to manage her own affairs. Brennan reviewed the stack in silence. When he looked up, his expression was grim. "Joanna," he said quietly, "may I have a moment to consult with my client?" They stepped into this hallway. When they returned 5 minutes later, Barrett's face was ashen. Joanna spoke before they could sit down. "Attempting to execute that power of attorney constitutes Class F felony fraud under North Carolina law, given that the estate in question exceeds $100,000. The digital text archive provides open and shut evidence of conspiracy under Statute 14-112.2. Adult Protective Services has opened a formal investigation file. We can resolve this now, or we can file criminal referrals and proceed to trial." Brennan opened his briefcase and pulled out pre-prepared withdrawal documents. Barrett signed the motion to withdraw the guardianship petition, signed the binding notarized settlement agreement establishing a 5-year repayment schedule for the debt with default penalties and interest. His hand shook as he wrote his name. Watching Barrett sign his name felt like watching a verdict being read aloud, quiet, irrevocable, and long overdue. When he finished, he looked up at me with hollow eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom." I met his gaze, steadily exhausted down to my bones. "I know." As we walked out to the elevators, Joanna looked at me. "What about Celeste Romero and her daughter?" I pressed the button and gave a quiet shake of my head. "They'll tear each other apart now. Celeste needed that $47,000. She's not getting it. I know exactly how women like her operate. When their plans collapse, they burn everyone around them trying to save themselves." Faye Langley appeared on my front porch 2 weeks after the settlement with a homemade pumpkin pie in her hands and the kind of expression that meant she had news I'd been expecting. "You were right," she said, settling into the chair beside me. "About all of it." I poured us both coffee from the thermos I'd brought outside to watch the November twilight. The air smelled like wood smoke and dying leaves. "November 15th came and went," Faye continued. "No payment. The commercial landlord at North Hills Mall severed Celeste's lease the next morning and kept her entire deposit, $12,000, gone. She went absolutely nuclear. I sipped my coffee and waited. She turned on Barrett and Breyer immediately, started demanding they repay her for every penny she spent over the past 3 years, masterminding what she called this disaster. Legal fees, the lease deposit consultation fees she claimed she paid to some elder law specialist back in the spring. She itemized everything like she was billing a client. The irony wasn't lost on me. Celeste had taught her daughter to document manipulation as evidence of my decline. Now she was using those same skills to sue her own family. Breyer refused, Faye said. Flat out told her mother she conceived the entire plan she should eat the losses herself. Said Celeste promised them it was foolproof that you'd sign over everything willingly once the guardianship was in place. Now all 3 of them are in court. Celeste suing Barrett and Breyer for repayment. Breyer countersuing Celeste for fraudulent advice. Barrett caught in the middle, trying to save a marriage that's disintegrating in real time. She paused, studying my face. How do you feel about that? I looked out at the street, at the maple tree losing its last leaves, at the neighborhood settling into evening quiet. Nothing, I said honestly. I feel absolutely nothing. Not even a little bit of satisfaction. Not even that. I turned to her. They're destroying each other exactly the way I knew they would. Celeste is a woman who burns bridges when she doesn't get what she needs. Breyer learned manipulation from an expert and has no loyalty beyond self-preservation. Barrett chose his wife and her mother over his own judgment years ago. This was inevitable the moment their plan failed. Faye was quiet for a moment. Do you want me to keep you updated? Let you know how it all shakes out? No, Faye. I set my coffee cup down gently. I'm completely finished with that chapter. After Faye left, I sat alone on that porch, watching the November sun set, and realized I felt absolutely nothing about their destruction. Not satisfaction, not pity, just the profound relief of a door finally closing. Later that evening, I sat at my home office desk, the same oak desk where I'd canceled everything back in August, where I'd discovered the ledger, where I'd made the phone call to Joanna that started the counterattack. This time I wasn't canceling, I was confirming. I opened the Outer Banks rental website and entered my dates, December 10th through December 17th. 7 nights. The beach house I'd originally reserved was still available, weathered gray shingles wraparound porch, facing the Atlantic walking distance to Bodie Island Lighthouse. Number of guests? 1 adult. Bedroom preference 1 queen bed. I clicked confirm. The reservation confirmation arrived in my inbox 30 seconds later. I opened the attachments one by one, printing each page. Rental agreement, check-in instructions, local restaurant recommendations. I made a dinner reservation at the oceanfront seafood place Vernon and I had circled in the brochure 3 years ago. Table for 1, December 12th, 6:30 p.m. Ocean View. I purchased a single entry ticket to Bodie Island Lighthouse Observation Deck. December 11th, 10 a.m., 1 adult. This laptop had been the site of so many small deaths in August, every canceled reservation a dream dying, but tonight, each confirmation felt like planting seeds in ground I'd finally cleared. When everything was booked, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the photo album I kept in the bottom left corner. I turned to the final page, the photograph of Vernon holding that lighthouse brochure, his wide grin filling the frame, his finger pointing at the black and white striped tower. I traced my finger over his smile. You told me you had something vital to tell me when we finally stood at the top together, I whispered to the photo. Something you were saving for that exact moment, that exact view. I'm going up there for you, Vernon. I'm going to climb those 214 steps and stand where you wanted us to stand, and I'm going to find out exactly what it was you wanted to say. I closed the album carefully and looked at the December calendar hanging on the wall above the desk. 2 weeks, 14 days until I would pack a single suitcase drive 3 hours to the coast. Check into that beach house under my name alone and wake up to the sound of winter waves. 14 days until I would walk across cold sand to that lighthouse, pay for my single ticket, and begin the spiral climb to the observation deck. Barrett and Breyer and Celeste could destroy each other in courtrooms. They could spend the next 5 years tangled in litigation and blame and bitter recriminations over who owed what to whom. I would be standing at the top of a lighthouse 156 feet above the Atlantic Ocean, receiving whatever message my husband had saved for me. For the first time in 3 years, maybe longer, I wasn't waiting for something to end. I was waiting for something to begin. I closed the laptop and looked at the December calendar hanging on the wall above Vernon's old desk. 2 weeks. In 14 days, I would drive to the Outer Banks alone, check into that beach house under my name only, and climb 214 iron steps to the top of Bodie Island Lighthouse. Whatever Vernon had wanted to tell me at that summit, whatever truth or gift or final message he'd saved for that moment, I was finally ready to receive it. The first iron step was cold enough to sting through my glove when I gripped the railing at 7:43 a.m. on a December morning so clear the Atlantic looked like hammered silver. Bodie Island Lighthouse rose above me, 214 steps spiraling upward through the black and white striped tower, up to the observation deck where Vernon had always dreamed of standing beside me. I'd driven 3 hours yesterday, checked into the beach house alone, slept soundly for the first time in months, and woken before dawn to walk across cold sand to this exact spot. Now I was here and I was climbing. The iron steps rang under my boots, a steady rhythm, echoing through the hollow tower. 1 step, 2, 10, 20. I took my time pacing myself, breathing steadily, completely unhurried for the first time in what felt like years. 30 steps up, I passed a narrow window. Sunlight streamed through, catching dust motes in the air. I could see the beach house I'd rented, the empty parking lot, the dunes rolling toward the ocean. 50 steps. My calves were starting to burn, but it was a good burn, the kind that came from choosing to move forward, not from running away. 70 steps. I paused at another window, catching my breath, looking out at the coastline stretching north toward Nag's Head. The view was already spectacular, and I wasn't even halfway up. 214 steps, I said aloud to the empty stairwell. Vernon counted them on the brochure, 214 chances to turn back. I kept climbing, 100 steps. The spiral was tighter now, the iron railing cold and solid under my hand. My breath came harder, but my pace stayed steady. 150 steps. I could hear the wind now whistling through the observation deck above me, calling me upward. Each iron step rang under my feet like a bell marking time, not time lost, but time reclaimed, one deliberate footfall at a time. 180 steps, almost there. My legs ached, my lungs burned, but I felt strong, stronger than I'd felt in 3 years, maybe longer. 200 steps, 14 left. I could see daylight above me now, bright and sharp and impossibly blue. 214. I stepped out onto the open-air observation platform, and the wind hit me like a living thing, biting cold salt sharp, carrying the smell of deep ocean and winter morning. The sky was piercingly clear, that rare crystalline blue that only comes after a hard frost. The Atlantic spread before me in every direction, endless and silver and vast beyond comprehension. I walked to the railing and gripped it with both hands. The view was everything Vernon had promised, and nothing I could have imagined. The coastline curved away in both directions, a delicate thread of sand between ocean and sound. The morning sun turned the water into hammered metal, blinding and beautiful. I could see fishing boats far out on the horizon, tiny as toys. I could see the curvature of the earth. I unzipped my coat and pulled out the photo album I'd tucked into the inner pocket, turning to the final page. Vernon's face grinned up at me, his finger pointing at this exact lighthouse, his eyes full of that particular joy he got when he was planning something special. "You wanted me to see this," I whispered to the photograph, my words stolen by the wind. "Not just the ocean, not just the lighthouse. You wanted me to see what it feels like to stand somewhere I earned the right to be." And suddenly I understood. Vernon's message, the vital thing he'd said he wanted to tell me when we finally stood here together, it wasn't words. It had never been words. It was this exact experience, this moment of standing alone at the summit of something beautiful and terrifying and earned. He'd wanted me to understand that places like this, views like this, moments like this, they don't belong to everyone. They belong exclusively to people with the rare, fierce courage required to climb 214 steps and stand in the freezing wind and look infinity in the face without flinching. He'd known I had that courage. He'd seen it in me 35 years ago when we got married, seen it when I built my career from nothing, seen it in 1,000 small moments of resilience I'd never noticed myself. And he'd wanted me to see it too. I stood there at the railing completely alone, 156 feet above the Atlantic Ocean. And I knew without a shadow of doubt, without a whisper of uncertainty, that I belonged here, that I had earned this, that the woman who could climb these steps and stand in this wind and claim this view was exactly who I'd always been underneath every moment of doubt and fear and diminishment. The wind at the summit was so cold it stole my breath, but I didn't step back from the railing. I leaned into it, letting it prove I could withstand forces that once would have knocked me down. I tucked Vernon's photograph into my breast pocket right over my heart where it belonged, and took one last look at that impossible horizon, endless water meeting endless sky, no boundaries, no limits, just open space stretching forever. Then I turned back toward the stairs, not because I was leaving this place behind, not because I was finished, but because I was finally ready to carry it with me, this strength, this certainty, this unshakable knowledge of who I was, when no one was watching, when no one was taking, when no one was telling me I was anything less than enough. I never did find my way back into that family, but out here staring into the wind with salt on my face and iron under my hands, I finally found the woman that family had spent decades forcing me to forget. And as it turns out, she'd been right here the entire time, just waiting for me to come pull her out. And to you listening to my story, remember this. Sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from. Looking back, I wish I'd trusted my instincts sooner. For 3 years, I blamed myself for feeling disconnected from my family. I questioned my own memory when they said I was confused. Don't make my mistake if something feels wrong, it probably is. Document everything. Trust yourself, and never apologize for being thorough when your gut tells you to be careful. This is what revenge stories with Mom at the center teach us. Real strength isn't loud. It's quiet documentation, patient preparation, refusing to let gaslighting rewrite your reality. Family revenge stories like mine aren't about bitterness. They're about reclaiming what was stolen. I believe God put me through this for a reason, to show that 62 is not too old to fight back, to start over, to stand alone and finally recognize the woman in the mirror. These revenge stories, with Mom standing strong, aren't fantasies, they're survival guides. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment below. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-protection? Your story might help someone else. If you know someone navigating family manipulation, share this with them. They're not alone. And if you'd like more family revenge stories, please subscribe to Silent Revenge with Phoenix. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your time means everything to me. Please remember, while this story contains fictionalized details for storytelling and reflection, the lessons about documentation, self-trust, and reclaiming your life are very real. Family revenge stories exist because families are complicated, and sometimes walking away is the bravest choice of all.